And breathe. Wow. Full day of football yesterday. We have a full show tonight. Welcome in. This is Talking Tide. I guess technically it's still daytime. Usually I record these shows at night, but we got family dinner. It is Sunday, so we got family dinner to get to. Tried to get the show done a little bit earlier than normal. First things first, I want to get this out there. Thank you guys so much for the growth on this page. It means a ton. We've had a lot of growth over the past week or so, both on here and on Instagram. If you're not following on Instagram, please do so. It's at Talking Tide. Same name. You can see it right down there. We had 8,500 followers this week. So I appreciate all of you guys. Football season is always crazy. It's always hectic, but it never goes past me. It never goes over my head. The amount of support that you guys give, both here on YouTube, which is new, and on Instagram. So I just want to go ahead and say thank you guys for all the support. It means a ton. I love doing this. I love doing this page both here and again on Instagram. So I just appreciate all of you guys that tune in and watch and comment and like and jump in my inbox on Instagram and all that good stuff. So I appreciate all of you guys. If you're new here, welcome in. Like I said, feel free to go check out the Instagram. If you are new to the YouTube page and you get 20, 30 minutes into this video and say, oh, well, I'm enjoying this, please feel free, hit that thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button. It means a ton. It helps the channel out a lot. So I appreciate all you guys. Let's get into this week. It was a full week of football. The season is in full swing. So we're going to start off. We did it last Monday. We're going to start off with everybody's new favorite segment. It's Good Weekend, Bad Weekend. We did it last week. I enjoyed it. And it's a great way just to cover the top of college football. We don't have to deep dive into any of these games, but it's a great way to jump in and just get the top layer of what happened this week in college football. So first one up, we got good weekend, Auburn. They ended up with a win against Arkansas. Tough win, 33-24. Jackson Arnold ended up getting benched in the first half of that football game after a pick six. Just before halftime, he got dropped for Ashton Daniels, which Auburn fans had been calling for a while at this point. They just wanted to see what else they had at quarterback, whether it be Deuce Knight, which there's a story there that we can talk about, or an Ashton Daniels. And he played a good enough game. He went 6 for 8 for 77 yards, no touchdowns, but no picks either. The real thing that ended up winning this game for Auburn was their defense. They had 3 turnovers back to back against this Arkansas team who didn't. They played an okay game, but this Arkansas team, like Auburn, just isn't clicking on all levels. But ended up getting 3 turnovers, and that helped them pull away at the end. So good weekend for Auburn. Bad weekend, Auburn. So yeah, they had a good weekend. They got the win. But a lot of people thought that this was going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back in the way of Hugh Freeze. And I won't call them out by name, but there were definitely Auburn fans that I know that were cheering that this was going to be the day that they were going to lose to Arkansas and they were finally going to get on the right track as far as coaching goes. And it didn't happen. They ended up winning the game. Fair play to them. But do I think Hugh Freeze is the right fit for Auburn? I don't, if I'm being completely honest. And I think a lot of the fan base doesn't either. I think the higher ups see that and they know it's not the right fit. I think Hugh Freeze might think it's not the right fit. But they kind of put a Band-Aid over this for this weekend. So he saved his job. He's got himself another week after winning at Arkansas. But I think in the end, you just got to rip the Band-Aid off and do what Penn State did and do what Florida did and say, this isn't the right fit. Thank you for your service. Thank you for putting into this, all your coaching and all that stuff, all the time you've put in, but you're just not the right fit. It's time to move on. That's where I think Auburn needs to be. And again, they got the win this weekend. Would I be surprised if we see movement at the head coach spot Monday? No. But do I think it's going to happen now that they got the win? I don't. I think they wait until they get a reason to fire Hugh Freeze. Good weekend. Lane Kiffin. Now, Ole Miss ended up getting the win, and we will talk a little bit more about that later in the show. But I wanted to take a minute and talk about how good of a week and weekend it was for head coach Lane Kiffin. When you talk about names that have been thrown around in college football this past week, no guy has been talked about more than Lane Kiffin. His name being thrown in for the Florida job. He was reportedly offered $13 million per year, a deal equaling $81 million. for the whole contract. That would make him the highest paid coach in the SEC. And he did address his team. It was either Friday or game day on Saturday, saying that it was a great compliment to his staff that he was being looked at for this job, and it was credit to his team and all this stuff. The one thing, I think the most important thing is not what he said, but it's what he didn't say. He never ended up denying that he was going to take the job. He never ended up saying, "Oh, I'm going to stay at Ole Miss." From the quotes we read, now we don't know what goes on in that locker room. But from what I saw from the headlines, there was never him saying, "I'm not taking the Florida job. I'm staying at Ole Miss." So with stuff like that, and Kiffin knows this, he's no stranger to the spotlight. He knows if he doesn't say, "Hey, I'm staying here, I'm not going to Florida," the rumors are going to continue to swirl. And maybe he's decided he already wants to take the job, but with Ole Miss, they have a real good shot at playoffs. So maybe he wants to stick it out for the rest of the season. Maybe the team already knows. Maybe they don't know. Heck, maybe he doesn't know at this point what he wants to do. But it's going to be a very interesting finish to the season and into the postseason. If Florida didn't already find a head coach, I'll be very, very curious to watch that Ole Miss camp and see what ends up happening there. Because I think Ole Miss Florida's a great fit for Lane Kiffin. That's a ton of money you're being offered. You'll be the highest paid coach in the SEC. And you just got your first win. You just got your first ranked away win in the SEC. While at Ole Miss, that feels crazy to me. That just doesn't sound real. I keep thinking back like, oh, there has to be a game. There hasn't been a game where he's won against the ranked team in the SEC with Ole Miss. So, I mean, that is a huge chunk of money. And another reason it's a good thing for Lane Kiffin, if they're offering that money, Ole Miss is trying to offer him a new contract with boosted money and boosted bonuses, all that kind of stuff. So, good week for Lane Kiffin. Bad weekend at Colorado. Bloodbath does not begin to describe what I watched in the first half of that football game. I'll start by saying I am not the biggest Deion Sanders guy. I'm not the biggest fan of Colorado. I think it's a lot of football culture that I don't necessarily enjoy. The clickbaity culture of Colorado. I felt bad for them in this game. 53-7 was the final score. Utah led 43-0 at halftime. Utah, before the half, had 400 yards of total offense with 50 plays run. Colorado, 33 plays, minus 18 yards of offense. It was a bad week for Colorado, to say the least. They had blocked punts. They had pick sixes. It was not a good week for Colorado and this Deion Sanders team. I don't know where they go from here. I don't think that Deion is in the hot seat. I know he's had a lot of medical problems, and I feel bad for the guy. It's just a really tough spot to be in with having surgeries every couple of weeks and you're not with your team full time. It's a hard spot to be in. I'll give him all the grace in the world. We'll see what happens at Colorado. I've not heard anything about them moving on from Deion Sanders, because I think without Deion, that program goes back to what it was before, which is a 3-9 team. I think they are better with Deion there because of the names and the people they can draw. But I just don't know, head coaching wise, if Deion is in the right spot to be a head coach at the moment. I'll say it like that, because again, I don't dislike the guy. I wish him the best the best for his health and all that stuff. But right now, it's just not a good spot to be in Colorado. And I think that's why they get a lot of grace, because of the health stuff. And they have played games where they look decent, but that was a otherworldly beating that they took yesterday against Utah. Good weekend, Georgia Tech. I know a lot of people want to talk about Vanderbilt being a playoff contender and Pavia. You see the Heisman talk. I don't throw a lot into that. But if you want to talk Heisman talk, look at Haynes King. That dude is a dog at Georgia Tech. His stats from yesterday, 25 for 31, 304 through the air, 3 touchdowns. He also ran for 91 yards and 2 more touchdowns. He scored 5 total touchdowns. They're 8-0 in 8-0 on the season. They're 5-0 in ACC play. I think they're a real playoff contender. When you look at that schedule in the ACC, it's not all that hard. They have a real good shot of being in the ACC championship game. And even if you go and drop one from here on out, you'll still be in the playoffs. I think that, will they win a natty? I don't think so. I think they're just limited at what they can do in certain spots on the ball. But they're a fun team to watch. They're gritty. They're tough. They're entertaining. Yeah, Georgia Tech, great weekend, great year so far. They put on a historic season, so good for them. And I like Haynes King. I mean, who doesn't like the guy? He's tough, he's gritty, he's fun, he plays when he's hurt. He's a team guy. So congrats to them. I hope they do well. And honestly, I see them making the playoffs. Full transparency, I think they make the playoffs in this year. Bad weekend, Missouri. You lose a tough game to Vanderbilt. You played a gritty game last week against Auburn. You get beat against Bama in a tough game. You throw a Hail Mary that comes up literally inches short of tying you the game. So you suffer your second loss in 3 weeks after being undefeated. But the more damaging and more brutal thing comes whenever your quarterback, Bo Pribula, suffered a season-ending leg injury. I hate seeing players get hurt. I know that Missouri is not the best team in the world. They're not world beaters, but I hate to see a guy get hurt like that. In a tight game, you're trying to grit something out for your team, trying to push a ball into the end zone, and you end up with a season-ending injury. And with injuries like that, people will tell you it lasts a lot longer than 1 year. That's the kind of injury that can end careers. So I'm hoping that's not the case for Pribula. It's just a tough spot to be in for Missouri as a whole. A couple of weeks ago before Bama, you were looking at a playoff spot. You lose a tough one to Bama. You end up now your margins are a little more thin as far as leeway if you can lose games or not. You go lose inches with them tying this game against Vanderbilt. So it's a tough spot for them. They have a bye week coming up next, so they can maybe try and sort out a quarterback. And then you have Texas A&M in a couple of weeks. So it doesn't get any easier. I feel bad for Missouri. I really do. And I hope all the best for Pribula. Good weekend, BYU. I'll be transparent. I did not pick them to win this game against Iowa State. They went out, they gritted out a 41-27 win from behind. They're now 8-0. They're 5-0 in Big 12 play. I think Iowa State gets the win here. I thought they would. Full transparency, but congrats to BYU. They're in a great spot at this point. Undefeated on the year. Very much in playoff contention. You have a couple of tough games coming up. You have Texas Tech. You have Cincinnati. So it's not an easy route into the playoffs. And if you're a team like BYU with the schedule you play, you don't get as much leeway as a team like Bama or Georgia or Tennessee. So those wins versus losses will be a lot more important. If you end up with one loss to Texas Tech, I still see you making playoffs. But if you drop two, if you drop one to Tech and then drop one to Cincinnati, anything like that, the margins are thin. But I think BYU is a good football team. And I can very much see them getting over the hurdle and into playoff contention. Bad weekend at UCLA. After finding something of a revival at UCLA, they started this season awful. Like everybody knows, fired everybody. They were the laughing stock of the college football world. And then they passed that honor on to Penn State by beating them. They got beat handily at the hands of a good Indiana team. Final 56-6. UCLA was never up for. They were never going to win this game. I won't say they weren't up for it. They didn't seem up for it from the surface. But UCLA is a good football team, and good football teams can make mediocre football teams look very bad. And this UCLA team looked very bad. They look like they have the past. They look like they did at the start of the season. You could have played this game 1,000 times. UCLA was never going to win this game. Imaliava went 13 for 27, 113 yards and 2 picks, including a pick 6. I think UCLA is better than what they showed on the surface coming into this year. The first 3 games that they played, I think they're better than that, just based on a personnel standpoint, a coaching standpoint. Those guys want to play and they want to be there. But whenever you're not clicking and don't play your best and you come up against a good team who is clicking and is playing very well, you can get results like this. I don't think it's the end for UCLA in their season. I still think that they could potentially make a bowl game, which if you would have said that 4 weeks ago, you would get laughed at. I think they still can, but this was a big step back for them. That's it for Good Week and Bad Weekend. I love doing this segment. I think it just covers a little bit of college football in general. And now we can do a little more of a deep dive into a couple of games I really want to talk about. And we had some great games this weekend. First things first, I want to talk Ole Miss, Oklahoma. Ole Miss beats Oklahoma 34-26. Lane Kiffin gets his first ranked SEC road win. And again, I was shocked to hear that. I'll start by saying this Ole Miss team is a good football team. The big question mark was, would their defense be capable enough of getting stops for their offense to go and win the game? And yes, they did. They did exactly that. We'll talk some numbers real quick about this game. So for Trinidad Chambliss, quarterback for Ole Miss, 24 of 44, 315 through the air and a touchdown, no interceptions. He also had 53 yards on the ground. Kawan Lacey for Ole Miss, running back, 27 carries, 78 yards. Not a great production day on the ground. I thought Lacey had some good runs in this game, but he also tacked on 2 touchdowns. A couple of receiving stats. Winston Watkins, 4 catches for 11 yards. 4 catches for 111 yards. Harrison Wallace III, 5 catches for 64 yards. Caden Lee, 3 catches for 60. The 1 reception for a touchdown was Trace Bruckler. He had 1 catch for 8 yards, being that touchdown. The offense was clicking for Ole Miss. They did at times, they did a very good job when they were moving and on schedule. They're one of the scariest offenses in the country, playing against an Oklahoma defense that, by Brent Venables' own admission, they had not been tested yet. He said that, and I thought it was an interesting point whenever you looked at the teams that they had played. I think this Oklahoma defense is legit. Just going to start with that. But when you look at the teams that they ended up playing before this game, they haven't played anybody that had a top 30 offense. And LSU this year is number 9 in national offense. So this was their first real test, and it showed they weren't as salty, they weren't as seasoned as they could have been, and they ended up losing this game because of that. For Oklahoma, a couple stats. John Mateer, 17 for 31, 223 at 1 touchdown, no interceptions. For rushing, Xavier Robinson, 9 carries for 109 yards. He had a good day on the ground. John Mateer also ran for 17 yards, some receiving. For Oklahoma, Deion Burks, 4 catches, 32 yards. Isaiah, I struggled with the same name last week, so I'm just going to say it's Isaiah the third. 6 receptions for 131 yards and a touchdown. Jaron Kanak, 3 catches for 30 yards. It was, and also Isaiah the third had 1 fumble in that game that ended up being lost. Here's what I brought out of that game. I think with this game, the questions coming into it were going to be, can their defense get enough stops to let the offense win the game? Their defense is never going to win a football game outright for them. If it's a low-scoring defensive battle, I don't see that defense winning football games for them. What I do see is a defense that can be aggressive enough and make enough stops that the offense can go win you that football game. And this week they did that. Last week they couldn't do it against Georgia. This week they did. They got just enough stops so they got it done. When their offense is clicking, it's one of the best in the country. It's scary to play against. When you have a defense like Oklahoma who has elite personnel, again, they haven't been tested necessarily, but they do have elite personnel and a great head coach, a very defensive-minded head coach. Whenever I talk about a Brent Venables team, one thing I know they're going to have is a solid defense, and they were picked apart by this Ole Miss offense. Now, did Ole Miss do everything right? No. I'll be honest, I thought Lane Kiffin made some poor decisions in this game that could have really hurt them. They brought in backup quarterback Austin Simmons a couple times in short yardage situations inside the 5 or inside the 10. He missed a wide open guy. There was just a couple of packages they drew up for him that I just didn't quite understand where Lane Kiffin was coming from. Maybe they saw something in practice. Maybe they saw something in tape, but there were some poor decisions made on that front. He also went forward on a 4th down in their own territory, which I thought was a poor decision at the time. You were leading by a couple of scores, and the only way the other team gets back in the game is if you give them favorable field position. They go down and score. And again, the defense did enough to win that game for them, but I thought there was a couple times in this game where Ole Miss didn't win the coaching battle necessarily. Excuse me. A couple of other things I would say, and maybe to add on to that, maybe Lane Kiffin, we talked about it, him thinking about the Florida job and it being a real part of the rumor mill this week. Maybe he's not 100% focused on Ole Miss. I think knowing from what I've seen of Lane Kiffin, I don't think that would distract him necessarily, but maybe he wasn't all there. Maybe he wasn't 100% focused on this game, but there were some decisions in there I thought he made that just didn't make a lot of sense. But they end up winning the game. He gets his first road win against Oklahoma. A good Oklahoma team. For this Oklahoma team, I don't think they're healthy. John Mateer especially. And you'll hear people say nobody's 100% at this point in the season, which is completely true. Whenever you have a quarterback who has had a hand injury, his throwing hand specifically, had to have surgery on it, came back, I thought too early against Texas, did not play a good game there. They go out, they get a comfortable win against South Carolina, but there were still problems in that game. Watching it back for Oklahoma, they still had struggles. And then they come into this game, now they find their second loss in 3 weeks. I don't know where you go from here if you're Oklahoma. You got a tough test coming up in a couple weeks at Alabama. I think that offensive line is very susceptible. We've talked about it before with this Ole Miss defense. They're not the greatest. They do play aggressively. Pete Golding likes to play an aggressive defense. It's kind of an all or nothing defense, where either you're picking up negative plays and you're going to set them back and stop a drive, or you're going to give up some big plays on the back end. And they won. That defense beat that offensive line time and time again on the inside. Mateer was running for his life a lot of this game, and it forced a couple of mistakes. So I think if you're Oklahoma and you look now and 3 weeks ago when you were taking on Texas and you say, well, we're favored in this game. We can go out. Well, actually, they weren't favored. I apologize. We believe we can win this game. We're going in here. Yeah, our quarterback's not 100%, but we're playing against a Texas team who hasn't clicked all year. We can come into this game, and once we get past this, we look at, we have a couple tough games down the road, but now you look up, you lost that Texas game, you beat South Carolina, fair enough, and then you go and you struggle and you lose against Ole Miss. You look up now and the margin for error is razor thin. I'm not saying they can't make the playoffs, but I think it's a very thin margin for error now with Oklahoma. And going forward, it's not going to get much easier. Like I said, they have Bama coming up in a couple of weeks. They play, they end up playing, they have Tennessee, Alabama, Mizzou, and then LSU to wrap up the season. So you're going into a tough stretch in this year where Tennessee's got a great offense. Bama's a tough team just all around. Mizzou, they lost their quarterback, but they can play a gritty game. And then you have LSU, who's in a little bit of a disarray. But it's not an easy stretch by any means for an Oklahoma team that I thought peaked very early, and I thought they could keep on going in the ascendancy. But now we're seeing a real plateau and a bit of a fall off now in that team. For Ole Miss, it's a pretty favorable run, if I'm being honest. You're one loss. You suffered one loss to Georgia in SEC play, so that does hurt. But you look forward, you have South Carolina, you have the Citadel, you have Florida, and then you play the Egg Bowl against Mississippi State. Pretty favorable run if you're Lane Kiffin looking forward at this game. I think that at this last stretch of games, you look at your team and you say, we lost a gritty one to Georgia. We toughed this one out against Oklahoma. We've won a couple of games that maybe we wouldn't in the past. And now it might be time for us to get over the hump. We'll see. The Egg Bowl is always interesting. There are teams in there that can pop. South Carolina's one that can pop. So you never know. But for Ole Miss and for Lane Kiffin, I think they're in a really good spot. The real question for Ole Miss is, and the one thing that the fans and everybody around that program is going to be talking about is, will we have a head coach next season? And you will have a head coach next season, but will his name be Lane Kiffin? That's going to be the real cloud over this program for the time being until he denies the job or until Florida finds an official appointment for head coach. Next game I want to talk about, we're going to talk LSU, Texas A&M. And I can copy and paste the same thing I said about the Colorado-Utah game for the first half. I can apply that to the second half of this game. Bloodbath does not describe it. When you talk about home invasion, that's a term that Bama especially loves to throw around. We talk about home invasions. This was a home invasion in Death Valley. Last year when Bama visited LSU, it was a tough game for LSU. Bama really put them to the sword. It wasn't a competition. This game felt different. This was a turning point, I think, for LSU, and not in a good way. We'll talk numbers first because I always like to look at the numbers and see how this game plays out on paper. But there's a lot to talk about in this game. We'll look at the box score real quick. A couple of the numbers for Texas A&M first. Marcel Reed, 12 for 21, 202 through the air, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He also led the team in rushing, had 13 carries for 108 yards and 2 more touchdowns on the ground. Ruben Owens the second, 8 carries, 44 yards. Jamarian Morrow, 3 carries for 26 yards. This Texas A&M team ran it all over LSU. They ended up running for 224 total. That's including that's including sack yardage. So 224 total. Reception yards. Ashton Bethel Roman had 1 catch for 47 yards. He led the team. Casey Concepcion, special player. We'll talk about him in a second. 3 catches for 45 yards and a touchdown. Mario Craver, 4 catches for 42. So they went 202 through the air, 224 on the ground, and they scored a special teams touchdown. For LSU, the numbers are not good, to say the least. Garrett Nussmeier, 22 for 35, 168 through the air, 1 touchdown, no picks. So did a good job not turning the ball over there. On the ground, Harlem Berry, 9 carries, 59 yards, 1 touchdown. Caden Durham, 5 rushes, 36 yards. And then Michael Van Buren Jr., backup quarterback, 5 carries for 7 yards. LSU's receiving, Barry Brown, 4 catches for 60 yards. Aaron Anderson, 5 catches for 59. And then Tradez Green, 6 catches for 54 and 1 touchdown. Kyle Parker caught the other touchdown for LSU. He went 3 for 20. This game was not played in a box score. It was not close on the scoreboard, and it was way more of a beatdown than it even showed, 49-25. We'll talk about this game in 2 halves. For LSU, whenever you go into Death Valley, for any team that visits Death Valley, I think that there is an aura around it. There's kind of this mystical feeling, kind of like Bama fans, how we feel with Jordan Hare. There's this thing where just things can go wrong no matter how good you are coming into the year, no matter how bad the home team is. Things can go wrong in this game. They were 21-0 in night games under Brian Kelly. And at the beginning, at halftime, I thought this was going to be one of those games. LSU led at the half. They led 18-14. There was kind of a supernatural factor to this game, for lack of a better term. They blocked a punt that was for a safety. They had 2 interceptions. They had 1 pick that came out of the end zone. It felt like they could drag Texas A&M into deep water in this game and make it a 4-quarter game. And that second half, all the magic was sucked out of that stadium. The better team being Texas A&M, they put a real gap between the two. And this, for me, confirmed 2 things. The first thing was I suspected that, no pun intended, LSU was a bit of a paper tiger. I think they have underperformed all year, especially on offense. I feel like there's a bit of a disarray in that locker room. Kelly's feeling like he's on the outs before this game even started. This was a big game. And I won't paint this as it was a make or break game for Kelly and this team, but it was really close, and it ended very rough. They lost to Vandy last week. First time Vanderbilt's ever been favored in an SEC game. They went out and won. It's been a tough road for LSU up to this point, but this one felt different. Death Valley, like I said, it has an aura about it, and Texas A&M, they went out and they crushed them. They went out and they sucked any magic out of that stadium. And the few LSU fans that were in attendance in the 4th quarter of that game were calling for your head coach to be fired. If that's not a home invasion, I don't know what is. I think if LSU go and they lose a close 4th quarter game, that's one thing. But and A&M's a good team, and we'll talk about them. But I think if you go out there and you lose a game in this manner, I think that expedites the Brian Kelly firing. Now, I don't expect there to be any movement before the Bama game. They have a bye week coming up, so you could see it happen, but I don't expect them to be firing him this week. But if it happened on Monday, it wouldn't surprise me. It's kind of the same thing as Hugh Freeze. Would it surprise me? No. Do I think he's the right fit? No. Do I think management over there thinks he's the right fit? No, and we know what the fans think. So I wouldn't be overly surprised if they ended up firing him this week. I don't think it's going to happen, but if it popped up on my newsfeed on Monday, I wouldn't be shocked, because I just don't think he's the right fit, and I think everybody around that program knows it at this point. The other confirmation that this gave me was Texas A&M is legit. Now, and when they're at their best, they can play with anyone in the country. I subscribe to the, how can I put it? I subscribe to the camp of, if I don't see it, I don't believe it. There's always chatter around Texas A&M every year. And what do they always do? They end up underperforming. They lose a game they shouldn't lose. I look at it the same way I looked at Penn State with James Franklin. It's the haven't done and can't done. There was a long time where Texas A&M couldn't have won the big game. They couldn't make the playoffs. They couldn't win the SEC. They couldn't win a national championship. This time, it's maybe they haven't done it. With Mike Elko and this program, there seems to be a mindset in this camp that we're not going to be the classic Texas A&M that goes and falls at the hurdle they shouldn't fall at, or they lose the big game. They feel like they have a different mentality. And when you look at the skill on the field, when you pair that with an elite mentality, you get a national championship contending team. And that's where they're at. I look at these teams as tiers. We talked about BYU earlier. I say Georgia Tech. They're on that second tier. We can compete for a playoff spot. We think we can make it there, but I just don't know. Everything after that's gravy. When I look at teams like Ohio State, Alabama, and then now this Texas A&M team, they're in the top tier. They're saying we have the team, we have the mentality, we have the personnel, the coaches to compete for a national championship team. And they showed it last night. Did I expect them to perform like that in that moment? No, because I haven't seen it before. I haven't seen Texas A&M go out and put on a performance like that against what is a weakened LSU team, but they made them look like a high school team out there. I felt like in that first half, all the 50-50 balls, everything, all the little quirks were all going LSU's way. And in my head, I was thinking, okay, well, this is the one where Texas A&M, either they fall or they prove everybody wrong. And they didn't just prove everybody wrong by having a fourth quarter win or grinding out and winning in overtime. They went out in that second half and they broke Death Valley. They cracked any kind of aura and magic that place had to the people under the Brian Kelly regime, and they blew it wide open. I think anybody now can look at that game and say, you know what? We can go win there too. When there are times when I think back about what made someone like Nick Saban great at Alabama is you never really had those. They lost bad against Clemson in a national championship game. They never went into home and got just beaten down and blown out. There are plenty of places that are home fortresses, and Death Valley was in the top tier. And now it's a place where LSU plays football. I'm sure they'll show up and show out whenever the team is back at home, but I mean, it felt like something broke in LSU last night that I've never seen before, and I just don't think it's repairable with Brian Kelly. I think you have to get a new regime, and you have to find some new belief, not just for the fans, but for those players, man. Watching Garrett Nussmeier at the end of that game, that dude looked like he was going through it. It was a tough watch if you watch that game, and even if you're not an LSU fan, I just think it was a tough watch in that game. For Texas A&M, they are what I thought South Carolina was going to be. They have a dynamic mobile quarterback who's a good enough passer of the ball. He can get the ball to dynamic, elite wide receivers in the open field. They can break open the game. They win in special teams. I mean, that Concepcion kick return was phenomenal. That dude is a player and a half. If I'm an NFL guy, if I'm looking at drafts, he's on right up there in the top of my list of guys who can bust the game wide open. On top of that, with an offense that can win in a shootout, you have a defense that put LSU in a blender last night. I remember a few years ago when Bama played LSU, and it was Zach Mettenberger, and man, when that dude came out, he was literally crawling off the field at the end of that football game. That's what it felt like last night. This Texas A&M team, this Texas A&M defense, Nussmeier is going to see them in his nightmares for the rest of the year. 7 sacks, 11 tackles for loss. Nussmeier got pulled with 6 minutes to go. I thought he should have been pulled before that even. This game was over long before that clock hit 000. I thought that Brian Kelly should have pulled him even earlier. I think he went a drive too long. Luckily, he didn't get hit again. He's clearly not healthy. And I think just putting him out there, I think he said in the post game to leave him out there any longer would have been malpractice. I thought it was malpractice leaving him out there as long as you did. That game was over for a long time. So I think for LSU, or let me finish talking about Texas A&M. I think that this team can go win a national championship if they continue to play the way they have. Like I've said, there are times in the past where Texas A&M goes out and they underperform, but with this regime under Mike Elko, they look legit. They have an elite mentality. They have a great offense. They have a defense that can pop like they did last night, especially against teams that aren't up to snuff. If you have a team that can go out there and they can find out the weaklings, they can go out there and they can have a good game against a team that is generally considered to be okay, and they can make them look less than average, that's a good football team. And Texas A&M had a point to make last night, and they made it. So congrats to them. They look like a legitimate title contender, and I see them going to the SEC championship game. We'll talk about their schedule coming up here in a second. I think for LSU, if you, for those of you old enough, if you have a magic 8 ball and you shook it up and you said, what is LSU's identity and what is their future going forward? If you remember the responses on there, it says, response hazy, try again. And that's how it feels for LSU right now. Because right now they don't have an identity. They don't have an offense. Their defense is good enough in the same way that Ole Miss's defense is good enough, but that offense is miles behind where they should be. And for a guy like Brian Kelly, the reason I give him so much airtime and so much flack is when I think about moments against Florida, you get 5 interceptions from your elite defense, and your offense goes and puts up 20 points anyway. You scored 26 in this game. You scored 25 in this game. If it was good enough against Florida, why is it not good enough now? This offense hasn't been good enough all year. I almost started a new segment saying it's just called, did LSU score more than 20 this week? They did, but they still got beat by 3 scores. So whenever your defense is playing against a good offense and your offense is exactly what we've seen all year long, there's nothing new there. There's nothing new in that offense that we haven't seen so far. I don't know what you expect. And he took responsibility and said it, but I mean, it's too little too late at this point. I think for LSU and Brian Kelly, there's going to be a clear split there, whether it's at the end of the season or whether it's in the middle of the year. But the fans are sick of it. A lot of people didn't think it was a great fit at the time when they hired him, and it's proven to be so. So as far as games going forward, they have Bama after a bye week. Then they have Arkansas, Western Kentucky, Oklahoma to end the season. And then when you look at someone like Texas A&M, they have a pretty favorable schedule at the end of the season. They have Missouri, who just ended up losing their starting quarterback. They play South Carolina at home, so it's not in Columbus, so that's good for them. And then they play Samford and then Texas to end the year. So they're in very good stead. This is a team. These are 2 teams that are sitting on the opposite ends of the spectrum right now. One team is at the end of its life cycle as far as head coaching and regime changes go. And then you have Texas A&M, who's in the full ascendancy, new time under Mike Elko, and they're playing great football. So good for South Carolina. Good for Texas A&M. Up next, I don't want to dive too deep into this game before we get to Bama, South Carolina. I know we've run long anyway, and I try and keep the shows within an hour. And we have a lot to talk about when it comes to Bama, South Carolina. Texas, Mississippi State. What happened in this game? This game was like the twilight zone of football. I did not watch a lot of this game. I watched highlights and I watched the box score, but we were doing a live video after on Instagram. So if you like live videos, please follow on Instagram. We were doing a live video after the South Carolina Alabama game, and then somebody said in the live chat, "Did you see Mississippi State Texas?" It's like, yeah, I saw Mississippi State was whooping them, and they were up 14 points in the third quarter or fourth quarter or whatever it was, and they won. Haha, Texas lost. That's funny. And then I go and look, we're sitting and watching the Utah, or no, we turned on the World Series for a second because in between the LSU game, we're flipping back and forth, and I flip it over and see that Texas won in overtime. So that can't be right. So I go back and watch. They scored a special teams touchdown. Arch Manning ended up getting hurt in overtime. They threw a sensational catch for a touchdown, and they ended up beating Mississippi State. It's funny, man. Texas is one of those teams that they're just hanging on and hanging on and hanging on. I don't think they're a great football team, but there's something to be said for teams that just continue to win when they probably shouldn't. They beat Oklahoma, they shouldn't have. They beat Kentucky last week in a tough one. They won this week in a tough one. Are they an elite football team? No, but shout out to them. They ended up getting a win, and they're hanging on by a thread at this point. So, it is what it is. I'd be curious to see what happens with Arch Manning. I know he's out with a concussion. I actually didn't even look at their schedule, so I don't know what they have coming up. But it is what it is at this point. Hopefully he comes back healthy, all that good stuff. Now let's get to what everybody wants to talk about. We have Alabama beats South Carolina in Columbus 29-22, a fourth quarter comeback for the Tide. I'm going to start with this before anybody says anything. There is a ton of criticism thrown at this team, for myself included, and rightfully so. There was times for criticism in this game, but you have to look at it in context. We've had 5 weeks of tough, hard football, and we've found a way to win every single time. We've done something historic that no other team has done in the SEC. We beat 4 ranked teams in a row in conference play. And I don't think that it can get overlooked, the resiliency of this team. The grit, the want to win, all of it. The determination, all of it. And something that came across my Instagram feed this morning was this from Nick Saban. So I want to play it real quick.
Of our team for a long time. Everybody's got such a high expectation for what our team should be. I was just happy to see our players be happy about playing a game and winning. And it really sort of, if you want to know the truth about it, pisses me off when I talk to people that have this expectation, like they're disappointed that we only won the game 14-13 and in the way we played. Really, that's frustrating. You want to talk about something that's frustrating? That's frustrating to me. For our players who play with a lot of heart in the game.
So I want people to think about that as we go forward into this. And again, there is reasonable criticism to be had in this game. But I say any criticism I will say in this game, and I do have stuff I do want to say about this game. It's not that we're going to come off scot-free or anything like that. But I want to say it in the way of, I think this team can win a national championship. I said at the beginning of the season, we have some special guys. We have some special players. We have guys who have jumped their way right up to the top of some of my favorite in the history of Alabama. We've done special things this year. So I think all the criticism, all the flaming, everybody needs to take a half step back, look at what we've accomplished, look at where we came from week 1, and say, you know what? We didn't have our best yesterday, but teams before us, before this Crimson Tide teams last year, would have lost that game. These guys went out, they found a way to win it after the past 4 weeks that we've just had. We've had 4 of the hardest games we will have all year. We won those, and then we went out and we gritted out a tough win against a South Carolina team who was up for it. So I think everybody needs to take a half step back and say, you know what? Was I happy with the way we played? No. Was the team happy? DeBoer, was he happy? No. Nobody was happy with how we played, but we got a win where other teams probably would not have got a win. And that's special. The resiliency in this team is special. We'll talk about some of the stats real quick and box score watch a little bit in this game. And then we'll go in, we'll talk a little more about some of the good things and then some of the more critical things that we did in this football game. Starting off, Ty Simpson, still doing a great job, not throwing interceptions, 24 for 43, 252, 2 touchdowns. Jam Miller on the ground. We're going to talk about our running game. Jam Miller, 10 for 26. Jeremy Bernard again. ran 3 for 23 and 1 touchdown critically. Receiving, Daniel Hill, 4 catches, 76 yards. Leading receiver for the Tide. Ryan Williams, 7 catches with 72 yards. Jeremy Bernard, 5 for 54. And then Jam Miller, 3 for 23. A couple of numbers for South Carolina. Lenore Sellers, 18 for 32, 222, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. He also led them in rushing, 18 carries for 67 yards. Matt Fuller, 12 for 19. And then Rashul Fashion, 5 for 17. So other than Lenore Sellers, we did a great job containing the run. Receiving, Nick Harbour had that 1 big catch for a touchdown, 1 catch for 54 yards. Fashion had 4 catches for 47, and then Jaden Sellers 3 for 38. For Bama total as far as passing yards go was 535 or 530, 253, and then a rushing for 72. For South Carolina, total numbers 111 yards rushing, 222 through the air. So I want to get into it and say I want to start with. I said in the pregame show, if you guys watched, this game was not going to be as cut and dry as a lot of people thought it was going to be. When you look at South Carolina, you look at a team that has talent all over the field. They have not clicked this year. They've underperformed all season, but there was always going to be a game where they were going to bow their necks up and they were going to just get down and play football. And who else would they do it against other than Alabama? I think that I look at someone like UCLA as a team that has talent everywhere, but they can't click or they don't click week to week. I look at South Carolina the same way. I think South Carolina is a better team than UCLA, but the point is, I think that when you have a team that's got a mobile quarterback, he's got dynamic receivers, they have a defense that plays very aggressively, I think they will find ways to have success whenever they are willing to get down and do the dirty stuff. And what other week would you do it than when Bama comes to town? It's also homecoming. That crowd was loud. It was excited. It's a tough place to play. So I think that they were ready for this game. And they showed it. They went out, they played hard. And again, any criticism that gets thrown at Bama in this game may be justified, maybe not. But you also have to look at it and say there's 22 guys on the other side of the field that play SEC ball. They are some of the best players in their positions in the country, and they wanted to win that game too. So any criticism that you throw at our team, you also have to look at the other side and say, well, they played their best game of the year. This was a 1-game season for them. This is for South Carolina going forward, it's a 1-game season throughout, but especially when it's homecoming, when Bama comes to town, all that good stuff. Now, am I going to say we played perfect? No. We played probably our worst game since the Florida State game. And honestly, I say that not even in criticism of the players necessarily. I look at it more of as the preparation side, which I thought the same thing against FSU. We can match up personnel for personnel with everybody in the country, but when our preparation isn't there, I think that that's when we struggle the most. Because if one guy has a bad week, if Ryan has a bad week, or Germ or Jam, if any of those guys have a bad week, we have talent around the field that can step up and help out and supplement. I just didn't feel like we prepared correctly in this game. And I'm not saying we were lazy in practice or we were not motivated, not focused. Everybody knew this was a trap game. It was the biggest trap game we could ever imagine. Excuse me. But did we come into this game with the right game plan? I don't think so. And we as fans have right to criticize. We have our rights to speak our piece and say what we want. We're fans, and as long as it's not unreasonable or unruly, I think it's fine. But I say all this with the full intent of saying I hope and I want our team to get better. So I'll just preface it with all that. Now, again, my criticism doesn't necessarily focus on the players. It's on the game plan that we came forward into this game with. When I think South Carolina as an identity of their football team, I think they have a good mobile quarterback. I think they have some explosive wide receivers, and I think they have some of the best edge rushers of the country. Now, the biggest one of those three is the third one. when I think you're playing against somebody who has great edge play, great edge rushers, guys who are fast, they can get to the quarterback quickly, they can get him off his spot quickly. For me, in my head, I'm thinking as an offense, I'm thinking check downs, stuff in the flat, passes to the tight end, quick stuff off the line. I don't want the quarterback to be holding the ball. What did we come out and do? Under center, play action, tied, turning his back to defenses, ran inside zone runs out of the shotgun. I just don't think we played I don't think we put our best game plan forward to play this game. I think we played straight into their strengths of their defense, and we saw it with our offensive production. We scored 7 points in 3 quarters. Defense scored 7 points in 2 possessions. So do I think when I look at it and say it's a scheming problem, not even a game plan problem as a whole, I look at our offense and I say, are we able to score more points than 7 points in 3 quarters? Yes, of course we are. We've seen it. Is that South Carolina team good enough to stop us from scoring 10 or 20 points in this game? No, they're not. And your defense already spotted you 7. So when I look at those two things combined, even if we don't play our best game on offense, if we play a B or a C game, we still score more than 21. We score at least 21, rather. And then defense went and got you another pick 6 this week. So I think the poor passing scheme is one of the big things for this. But then we also have to talk about the elephant in the room, no pun intended. It's the lack of run game. There was a time, and I said this going into the South Carolina game, if we can't find a run game here, I will be concerned. And it was the worst it's looked all season. Maybe South Carolina sold out to stop the run. I still got to go back and watch film. As far as our blocking schemes go, I don't think I love some of them from what I saw on the replays. But this was the week I said we had to find a run game, and we did not find it. It was as bad as it's been all year. 19. I saw at one point it was 19 carries for 17 yards or something like that. That's not good enough. I'm no football genius. I am no great commentator. 17 for 19 is not good enough. Just going to leave that out there. You do not have to be a genius to figure that out. For the second week in a row, Jeremy Bernard is in our top 2 of running backs. Ryan Williams, I think, was our second best last week. Jerm's our second best this week. So we have to find a run game out. And we have a bye week, both for us here at Talking Tide. We can go through and watch film and break some of the stuff down. And I'm sure we'll put all that to video. But then also the team has this bye week to say, what are we doing wrong? We have the personnel up front. We have a good enough offensive line. We have a good enough running backs. We have guys who are freaks like Daniel Hill, who's, once he's in open space, he's Derrick Henry. He's impossible to bring down. But there's something that we are missing that we are just not clicking in a certain spot. I don't know if it's run blocking to open up holes. If we do a great job in pass block, there's no holes being opened up. We're just a nice, solid, cohesive wall protecting Ty. Maybe we're focusing too much on just being a cohesive wall and we need to open up some lanes. I don't know what it is. But again, we have a bye week. I'm going to go do a ton of film watching from there was a game this on Friday. I think it was somebody threw for like 608, and then another team ended up running for 372. I'm going to go watch that team that ran for 372 and say, you know what? We can pick things out of this that we should do better. So I'm going to go do that, and I'm sure the team will do that and look and say, where is our lack of run game coming from? Because it's not athletes. We have the athletes. I don't think Jam's 100%, and we've talked about before, nobody at this point in the season's 100%, but I think he's really hurting. He suffered that preseason injury, then a concussion against Missouri. And against Missouri, we looked good running the ball until he got hurt, and then it's been downhill after that. So I think that we have done a good enough job in supplementing the run game with short passes and screens, things like that, but we have to find a run game going forward. So that's going to be the biggest thing coming out of the bye week that we need to be improved upon. And for me, as a guy who loves a well-balanced offense, I grew up when Nick Saban had Derrick Henry and Trent Richardson and Mark Ingram, and we had a two-back system, and we would run it all over the field on people, and we threw the ball when we had to, and we had good enough quarterbacks who could get the ball down the field when we needed them to. We played a perfectly balanced offense. I love playing you carry the ball 31 times, you pass it 29 times type of offense. We can't do that right now. As someone who loves a balanced offense, I was begging to stop running the ball. Because in this game, it hurts you in two ways. So when I look at a team like South Carolina and they have quality edge rushers on both sides, and again, the offensive line did a good job. I saw a lot of flack put on them. We'll talk about that in a second. When you have I would say you have 3 or less seconds as a quarterback to get rid of that ball. One thing I never want to do as a quarterback, knowing that there are some NFL talent guys running at me, is turn my back to them. Every time we lined up in the I formation and ran a play action, boot, or anything like that, Ty's got his back to those guys for a second. And in a football play, 1 second is a long time because it allows those guys to break free. It's harder for Ty to read coverages when he turns his back. You make the offensive line have to work harder and work longer. The thing is, whenever you're a quarterback and you drop back, you fake the handoff and then you turn around. I would say Ty probably at max was getting through 2 reads. I would say that he probably got through his first read first. And then if he wasn't there, he had to jump over to his second read as a wide receiver. And if it's not there, it's just the play is dead. There were plays in there where he's not getting through that first read without having to move, without getting moved off his spot. And I think that whenever you put him in a play action situation, that makes it so much harder. The caveat to that as well is you don't have a run game. Nobody's buying the play action. There were times whenever you talk about play action, what that's trying to do, you're trying to do one of two things. You're trying to freeze the defenders. If they're blitzing or they're stepping up, you're trying to freeze them. And then you're also trying to draw eyes into the backfield from a safety spot or a corner spot. You're trying to create a little bit of just pause in that defense. That defense was not pausing. They were running downhill full speed every time at time because they know we don't have a run game. Somebody inside can go clean it up. And 9 times out of 10, the running back doesn't get the ball. So I don't think that was the best game plan coming into this game. And did our guys play our best game? No. Ryan had a big drop. Ty overthrew a guy late in that game. He overthrew a couple of deep balls. We didn't play our best game. We had a couple of drops. We didn't play our best game. But whenever you have stuff like that, I think that stacks up against you, it makes it way harder. Where I do want to give credit is that offensive line. There was a lot of flack thrown around for this offensive line. I didn't really understand it because I think, again, whenever you're put in a situation where Ty has to spend too much time in the backfield or plays take too long to develop, I think that it makes the offensive line's job so much harder. And I cheated a little bit. I just wanted to confirm I saw what I saw. We did PFF grades last week on Tuesday. We'll do it again tomorrow. But when I looked at those PFF grades, when I looked at pass blocking, I didn't see any big numbers that jumped out as big negatives. And then I went in to double check. Ty only got hurried 12 times in that game. Spoiler alert, Lenore Sellers got hurried 23 times in that game. That's a bad offensive line. He got sacked twice. It happens. But I think that offensive line did a good enough job. I just think the scheming put them and Ty in a very tough spot. I think our lack of run game is real. I think our lack of offensive line protection and passing production was something of our own making, personally. And again, maybe Grubb in this offense saw something that we didn't see in the film and all that stuff. I know they're coming into this game with the best intentions, but I think that you have to be able to make adjustments in the game. And guess what? In the fourth quarter, that was Grubb at his best. That fourth quarter touchdown drive, that was Grubb at his very, very best. The play calling, the execution, all of it was fantastic. So it took a little bit of time, but we did make the right adjustment and we won that game because of it. That fourth quarter, I'm going to go back and watch that fourth quarter drive. We might do a live video on Instagram or over here and just break it down. We have a bye week, man. We got plenty of time to kill. So I want to go back and rewatch that and really talk about what makes it so great, especially against the South Carolina team that's so susceptible to anything on the flats, tight end routes, check down screens, all that kind of stuff. They're so susceptible to it. That was the only thing I don't want to come out of this game saying it feels like a lost opportunity, because there are games where we've played and we haven't played our best. The other team has actually just straight up beaten us, and it happens. That didn't happen in that game. We were scheming ourselves into problems. So, but again, when I say you have to make adjustments, it was late, but we made adjustments. That 2-point conversion nearly gave me a heart attack. I can't say I didn't like the play because of the design. The drawing up of it was fantastic. Man, it scared me. As soon as I saw, I think it was Jam Miller go under for a direct snap. I had a lump in my throat. And again, I trust Ryan Grubb. I trust this offense, and we got the 2-point conversion, but it added some gray hairs onto my head. And then we got to talk about the defense. This defense, I said it week in and week out. They play for moments. You're playing against an offense that has a Jalen Milroe caliber freak at quarterback. So we knew it wasn't going to be an easy game. We know Bama's history with mobile quarterbacks. But we could have not had a single offensive snap in that first half, and we still lead in the half. We still lead at halftime. We would have led 7-6. So, or no, actually, I'm sorry. Yeah, we would have led 7-6. We were up 14-6, but we would have led 7-6 going into the half. If the offense didn't touch the field once, we would have led in that game. So there was some flack I'd seen thrown at the defense after that Nick Harbor touchdown. Look, South Carolina has freaks at offense. They got a freak at quarterback. Nick Harbor's an elite wide receiver. They will get their own. South Carolina came into this game low scoring average. They scored 20 points a game. They scored 22. So we held them to right about average. And that's with our defense playing most of the game on the field. I mean, time of possession wasn't close in this game. So defense had a lot to do. I'll pull the time of possession real fast. Defense was on that field for a long time. It was 32 minutes to 27 minutes. In that first half, I know in that first quarter, I think we had the ball a total of 3 minutes. They had it for 12 and a half. So that defense was out there for a long time. And if you're out there for a long time, offenses that have elite players will score. And this defense played for moments. We put them in a tough spot with the punt debacle. We could not move the ball very well on offense. And if you follow me on Instagram, said, you know what? We need a moment here from the defense. We got a touchdown. We've leveled it up. They went out and they secured a moment. Deontay Lawson went out there, got that strip sack. And Tim Keenan had no idea about that ball. That ball just miraculously fell under him, and he covered it, and we recovered. I saw Deontay Lawson trying to scramble up there and try and dig that ball out. I don't know how it ended up under TK without him knowing it, but we'll take it. Huge moment, huge play for Deontay Lawson, who hadn't had his best season this year. He's played fine, but that was a season-defining moment, I think, for him. So good for this defense. They continue to show up in moments. Got another pick six. They're creating turnovers. They're doing enough at the right time. And they've done it week after week. Also, it's been a long time since I've seen a Bama defense go out there with the bad intentions that this defense had. I mean, they were, in that first quarter, they were hitting guys. Bray Hubbard had a big one for a pass breakup. Who else? I think it was Drake Kirkpatrick had another big one. And we're not hitting small guys. We're hitting some big guys out there at South Carolina, and they were out there headhunting. So good for them. This defense, they showed up. They were intense. They were sharp. They wanted it. And they won us the football game. If we're all being completely honest, the defense won us that football game. Offense did a great job rallying and being able to do it in the last moments and not giving up. But defense won us that football game. And there are times when that happens. When you have a defense that's as elite as this one is, you can't look at an Ole Miss team and say, oh, yeah, the defense won us this football game, because they supplement an offense that's just high-powered. Our offense is normally high-powered. We weren't in this game. The defense took it upon themselves and said, hey, you know what? We'll go win this game. You go score. whenever we give you the ball back in plus territory, but we'll go win this game. And they did. And we've done that week in and week out. So good job for the defense. We only recorded 2 sacks. I know we had to get pressure for Sellers in this game. We did a good job keeping him pretty limited on passing. Like I said, they have some elite pass catchers out there. But we ended up, Sellers went for 222. He had that one big shot over the top. But overall, we did a good job containing in the secondary. He's hard to bring down. He's fast. He does his best in scramble drill. But, I mean, we ate that offensive line alive. We knew they were susceptible. We knew they were vulnerable. He was running for his life half of the game, it felt like. I said that as far as the criticism thrown at Alabama's offensive line, well, we had 13 hurries against Ty Simpson. They had 23. So that tells you a lot of the story right there. This defense was creating a lot of problems for Sellers. And again, a guy like Sellers, he's going to make plays happen just because he's a natural athlete. But we did a good job taking advantage of a very vulnerable offensive line. So going forward, for us especially, we need this bye week. We're banged up. We're beat up. We need to find a run game. Try and get some guys getting back healthy. I know Latsier Brooks was out of this game. Isaiah Horton's dealing with an injury. We didn't see him a lot in this game either. So we need this break. We have LSU coming back. Going to be not an easy game. It's never going to be an easy game when you play LSU, but we'll be highly favored in this game. I think we'll be motivated. We come out playing very well after our bye week. Then we have Oklahoma, Eastern Illinois, and then Auburn away. Always a tough environment. It's not an easy stretch, but one thing this team showed me this week that I haven't seen all week is resiliency, or all year is resiliency, because we haven't had to. We've done a good enough job winning games, but we showed resiliency this week, and I'm proud of this team. I'm proud of the players. I'm happy for them. Happy for this coaching staff. Every championship team, whenever you look back and you say, you know what, there was a moment of adversity that they battled through to get to where they're at now. I think this was that game. I think this was the moment where you look back and say, you know what, we didn't play our best. We weren't sharp. We didn't win in all 3 phases of the football game, but we found a way to win. And then now, once we get the opportunity, once we get the win, we go to whether it's an SEC championship or a playoff or just the next game. We had survive and advance, man. That's been the motto of the team for all year. We go out and say, you know what, we got the opportunity now. We didn't play our best this week, but we found a way to win. Now we go out again next week. We got to be sharper. We got to be better, because we're not always going to be able to find that way to win. So we got to prepare better. And again, we have a bye week, so I think we'll do that. Kalen DeBoer has quite a good record coming off a bye week. So I think we'll be much improved. This was a very much needed rest for this team. We've gone through a tough gauntlet, a tough stretch. And again, I'm proud of these guys, man. I really am. I think that what this team has done and what this coaching staff has done with the players and the mentality of this team, it feels different. From last year to this year, doesn't look like the same team. I don't think the team last year wins this game. So that tells you a lot. As far as South Carolina goes, doesn't get any easier for them. They're on a 3-loss skid already. You got Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and then you have Coastal Carolina, and then in with Clemson. Look, I like Shane Beamer a lot. I really do. If I was a program and I said, you know what, give me Shane Beamer, I'd take him all day long. I like what he's done at South Carolina. I'm concerned for him at this point. Like I said, you're on a 3-game slide. You're looking at possible 4 or 5 losses in a row if you drop games to Ole Miss and Texas A&M. So I'm concerned for him at this point. I think that there are other pieces that will be removed first. But when I look at this season, I see maybe one more win in Coastal Carolina, and that's not a guarantee. So I worry for him a little bit. I do like him. I hope he does well, but I'm glad we got the win this weekend. So, and I know a lot of you are too. I appreciate you guys hanging around. We've probably gone for a little over an hour now, so I appreciate you guys hanging on. Thank you guys for listening. Please do please subscribe. Like I said, this community is growing, and I appreciate all of it. I genuinely do. We have a bye week coming up. We'll do player grades tomorrow, so I'll get that recorded on Monday night. It'll come up on Tuesday. I got a couple other segments, a couple other fun things for the bye week. Not a lot to talk about as far as Bama games, but we got other stuff we can talk about, coaching searches, all that good stuff. I appreciate all you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Again, please hit that like, please hit that subscribe button. I will see you tomorrow, and roll tide.